Hey, it's Shauna. So I want to talk to you about houses for a second, and I this is something that I guess I take for granted that I think about, and I don't talk a lot about. But I wanted to talk about this concept of the hemispheres of the houses in astrology, and the different quadrants. And so this is inspired actually by a session that I did recently with a gal that is doing mentorship with me, and we talked about the houses and the quadrants, and she said it was something that a concept that she hadn't heard of before. And I think it's very valuable to think of the houses this way, where we section them out into 4 different segments essentially. And it's important because it helps you think of the chart as a whole. And this is something that I feel is lost. And if you've been following me for a little bit, you've maybe heard me talk about this, that it is so important to look at like your birth chart, another human being's, even a chart of the moment, to look at it as a whole versus little segments that we pull apart, because nothing exists in a vacuum. It's all connected. It's like a little ecosystem. And you'll have to excuse, I'm in my car. I am in the process of moving this week, and I've just been like thinking about talking about this, and inspiration strikes, you got to follow it. So an astrology chart, when you're looking at a chart, the first house is always going to be on the left side when you're looking at it. And then all of the houses are going to go around in a counterclockwise fashion. So first, second, third, etc., all the way to 12. And so it always goes around in this circle in this way, at least in Western astrology. And so if you were to divide up the chart and draw a horizontal line across the middle, you would have houses 1 through 6 on the bottom and houses 7 through 12 on the top. It's cool to look at it this way for a few different reasons. Number one, when you were born, this shows which planets were visible and which ones were not. So planets that are in houses 1 through 6 in the bottom slice, those are all going to be essentially under the horizon. So if I were to look out at the night sky or the day sky at the moment that you were born, those planets that are in houses 1 through 6, they are not visible. They're below the horizon. And that's important because that tells us that those parts of you are more internalized. Houses 1 through 6, they have more to do with the individual and more personal parts of life than the external world. And the opposite is true for planets that are visible, that are above the horizon. So the upper hemisphere, this is houses 7 through 12, they're more relational, and they're also more about being out in the world. And I am recording this live, so if you have questions about what I'm talking about, if you're just joining, hello, thank you for being here, welcome. So houses 7 through 12, those are planets that were visible when you were born. And this is important because that tells us that those planets, they have a certain amount of visibility. They have a certain amount of presence within you that is visible via the outer world and able to exert itself in the outer world. And side note, I think this is really interesting because the 12th house is known as the house of secrets and hidden things and solitary places, but it's above the horizon. The 12th house is said to be sort of like skewed, because if there is, like hypothetically, if you were looking out on the east horizon the moment that you were born, that would be the section of the 12th house. And if there's something obstructing the view, or if there's not sometimes the horizon gets fuzzy and things like that, the 12th house can make things fuzzy. Jen says, so empty house is below the horizon. That means most of the planets were visible at that time of birth. So that is an excellent question. That brings me to my next point. So when you're looking at a chart, they come in all different orientations. So some people have a predominance, they have a majority of their planets above the horizon. Some have a majority below. Some have them a majority on the right and left side, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that's important because that informs the way that the person moves through the world. And yes, it does say, like, if a majority of someone's planets are in houses 1 through 6, that means they were not visible at the time that person was born. And of course, each house has specific symbols, which we're not going to talk about today, but that tells us something about how that person operates. That tells us that there's a lot more going on internally than externally, that someone that has more planets in houses 1 through 6, their life is maybe not necessarily about being out in the world as much as it is about working with things that are more intimate within themselves and things that are closer to home, so to speak. 4th house is home, 5th house is children, 6th house is health, working with illness and health issues. 2nd house is money and finances, 3rd house is neighborhoods, etc. Like, those are all more familiar things versus 9th house is travel, university, 10th house is career, 11th house is groups and social organizations, etc. So yeah, it's super cool. The other part, and I don't want to make this too long, but the other part is you can do a very similar sectioning where you draw a vertical line through the circle. And this chunks things out in a different way so that you have the houses on the left side, which is the east side, the east horizon. I know it's flip-flopped to what you would think. And then the right side of the chart when you're looking at it is the west side. And so what's cool is that, let's see if I can explain this to you without a visual aid. So when you're looking at the chart, the signs and the houses go around in order counterclockwise. So it always starts with the first house and then goes around, and the signs always follow that. Whether you're using whole sign or not, it always follows that fashion. But when you're looking at a chart, you can see where things are rising, culminating, and setting. And this is important because it tells us also about that planet. If someone has a planet that is in the first house, that is the eastern horizon. That shows us where the eastern horizon is, and that planet is rising above the horizon. So it's essentially like being born out of that person. So if you have a planet that's in the first house or the 12th house, that is said to be a rising star in your chart. And so that symbolizes that that planet is coming into itself over the course of your lifetime. Versus if there's a planet at the top of your chart, say the 10th house or the 9th house, especially conjunct the midheaven, that is said to be a culmination point. And a planet that's there, it's already at its full culmination. That shows a planet that was there when when it was noon. And then at the other end, if you have a predominance of planets or any planet on the rightmost side of the chart in the 7th house, that's a setting position. So planets that are placed there, they have already reached their height, and there's a certain amount of like this feeling of exhale, or this feeling of release, this feeling of having gone through something and falling into it, relaxation, etc. So people, the other part of that is people that have a predominance of planets on the left side, on the east side, the rising side, those people, their life is definitely about choosing. It's about action, but it's more like they need to figure out, or they need to decide, not even figure out, like they need to decide and sometimes feel very uncertain and just make a decision in order for things to unfold. Versus people that have a predominance of planets on the right side, the setting side, there's a certain amount of destiny that these people can feel. And, regardless of your philosophical view on life, sometimes these people feel more like they're following breadcrumbs. Some would use the word fate, but it feels like they're following something, like there's a meant to be-ness, versus those with predominance on the left side of the chart, it's more like they need to decide and then things fall into place, versus people with the right side. It's more like there's an encouragement of them to listen and to follow the clues there. So I hope that makes sense. I think that's all I want to say right now. It's really hot in my car, and I just wanted to put that out there. And if you want to know more about this, let me know. I know that I've been getting a lot of requests to talk about the houses and the planets more, and I thought this would be a nice way to share with you how you can look at the chart as a whole. I think that it's especially in westernized cultures, we're so we've just been trained over our whole life to look at things in segments, to look at things in micro, to look at the microness of something, and to look for the answer. And it's not that simple, like in life in general, but also in astrology. And so I'm always looking for ways to share with you how we can look at astrology as a whole system, how we can look at you, because you're not just one thing. You're this beautiful, complex, unique being. And so I always want to share with you ways that we can look at the astrology with that in mind. I'm going to look at the comments really quick, see if there's anything else. Do you think this may play into people being right-brained versus left-brained? That is an excellent question. I think that's a whole other TED Talk. I think that's a whole other thing. I don't think it's related necessarily. And I will say, that I think that's another way in which we try to segment things too, because there's research that there is a predominance of your right brain being more linked to creative and spatial thinking, and then your left brain being more linked to linear thought. But it's not as clear cut as that. Like, there's the tendency, but that doesn't mean that those sides of the brains are only used for those activities. There's definitely a counter, there's a little bit of both in each side. So I think that's important, because I think we got to use both. But I think that's an excellent, I like the way you think there. All right, cool. Awesome, guys. Well, I am sending you so much love, and I'll make another one of these soon. And have a wonderful afternoon. Namaste.